Hey everyone, this is Tony. I'm out here today with my pawpaw trees, and I'm thinning the fruits on them. And I'm doing that today, so I might as well make a video on it and explain why I'm doing it and what the benefits are. So there are several benefits to doing this. One of them is to increase fruit size. So if you don't thin them out, you might get a lot of fruits on the tree, but because it's putting so much energy into a lot of fruits, they're going to be smaller sized. Thinning them out will help to keep the fruit size larger. And so because of that, you'll probably have kind of a better flesh to seed ratio on those fruits as well, which is nice. Another benefit is that it keeps the weight of the fruits. If you do it yourself, thin the fruits out, it'll keep the weight of the fruits better distributed around the tree if you do it right, so that there aren't too many fruits on a single branch. So if you have too many fruits on a smaller side branch, you run the risk of that branch breaking in like a summer storm. And that did happen to me with one branch last year. I did thin these fruits on these trees really well, but not quite well enough. I thought I did really well with it, but I think I wish I thinned them out a bit better, especially with this tree, Allegheny. But yeah, I did have one branch on my Shenandoah over here that I think it had like 2 or 3 clusters on it. And it wasn't a real big branch. It just, in the clusters, I think I left too many on each cluster. And so there was just too much weight, even with, I tried supporting some of the branches on them, like tying them up with like a vinyl tape, like tying some of the branches together. And that helps if you do run into that issue. But it's best to not risk, having your branches break. Another benefit for me is that you can see I have some orange tape on some of these branches because I'm doing some, I did some cross pollination this year, or what's called a controlled cross, where I took a flower, you can see there's a little fruiting. Yeah, there's some fruitlets right there. And so the flower that was right there, I took an organza bag, like a thin mesh bag, covered that flower. I may have covered the flower or just put it on this whole branch so it had better support. But yeah, I covered that so that nothing could pollinate it. Well before it was fully opened and receptive to pollen, because pawpaw flowers transition from female to male. They start off female, then develop the pollen once they're not receptive anymore, and become male, and then release their pollen. The anthers release the pollen so that they can pollinate other pawpaws. But so I covered that, and I took a flower from one of my other trees. This one is CH, that's for Chappelle. I had like one flower on my Chappelle tree. So I took that once it became male and released pollen. I took that pollen with like a paintbrush and rubbed it in that female flower to get it pollinated. And so I have a cross of Chappelle and Shenandoah. So, like I was saying, one of the benefits for me this year, I'm doing it kind of early because I want to keep these fruitlets on these branches that I pollinated. And pawpaws, most fruit trees do this. They'll do a thing that we call June drop, which is when the trees naturally will thin themselves thin the fruit off of their branches. A lot of trees do this. Some trees you do have to thin them yourselves, like peaches. They'll overproduce if you don't. But like a natural wild tree that hasn't been domesticated too much, like pawpaws, they'll naturally thin themselves pretty well. So typically in the month of June, they'll drop a lot of those little fruitlets because they only have so much energy. They kind of figure out how much fruit they can handle. They'll drop the fruit that they can't handle. So I want to thin some of these out early enough that before June drop really starts to happen, I can make sure and thin this tree well enough that these controlled crosses don't get dropped. So I'll thin out some of the other ones better. So today is June 4th, I believe, 3rd or 4th. And these trees, the 3 of them that fruited last year, they all produced quite a bit of flowers, a lot. A late freeze did kill some of them, but not that many. But pawpaws are pretty resilient to late freezes, as long as it's not, too late of a freeze, like in May. Like in the second week of May or so, that would be a pretty harmful freeze. But, freezes through April, they can handle pretty well. They're pretty good at, oftentimes they have dormant flower buds that are really small and hard to find. You don't even notice them. But then after it drops some of those flowers, those dormant buds will start to swell up and you'll get a new set of flowers. But these trees produce pretty well. Even my mango finally produced some flower this year, maybe about a dozen. So hopefully I can get some fruit off of that one this year. Anyway, they produce these flowers in, I think starting in late April through mid-May or so, even into late May. This one, the Wabash, it hung on to flowers at least a week and a half or so longer than the others. It may have started flowering a bit later, but it just kind of held on to them for a long time. And even that, I don't know why, but this, the top of it took quite a bit longer to send out its vegetative buds this year. Not sure why, but it seems okay. I haven't noticed any damage or anything, so it seems to be doing fine. But this actually still has one flower left, one that hasn't dropped off yet. And it's you see it's a male. You can see the pollen in there, I think. Yep. But this won't last much longer. Anyway, let's show you some of the, what is this? Looks like something happened to a bird. And those feathers have kind of reddish tips. Ooh, here's is that a wing feather? It's a nice red color, probably a cardinal. Some sort of scuffle with a cardinal over here. Anyway, let me show you an example of how I thin these out. And we'll look down low on this one. It's a branch I was looking at earlier. Let's see, this branch right here, if you can see this branch right here, and it comes out right here. So I'm going to try and thin this branch to keep the fruits from weighing it down too much, keep it balanced out. Now I'm going to count the number of fruiting clusters on here. So right here we have 1, Right above it, there's another small one. Focus right there. So there's two. There's none on this little branch. So we go up. There's a good sized cluster right there. There's none there, none there, none on the leading branch. There is one on this one coming off to the right here. There's a cluster right there. So there are 4 clusters on this branch. I don't think it needs quite that many. And this one right here is pretty small. So, you know, it has a cluster right next to it. I don't need this one. I'm just gonna pick it right off. It just broke right off easily. There even are some little fruitlets falling off at this point. You know, we're not in like full June drop where you'll see a whole bunch on the ground quite yet, but it is starting. You can see where the fruit's attached to the stem, or I think that's called a peduncle. Maybe I'm mispronouncing that, but yeah, there's like a little fruit that attached there, a little fruit that attached there. You can see on the ground, I can probably find one. Yeah, there's a little fruit right there. There's some in there that have fallen down. So it's already starting to drop fruit. So yeah, I picked that one off. This one, okay, because this tree is Allegheny, I'm gonna thin this out a decent bit more than the other trees, because Allegheny tends to overproduce. Most of the trees, you know, hold on to about as much as they can handle. Allegheny tends to produce quite a bit more. Maybe not necessarily more than it can handle, but the thing is, it overproduces to the point where the fruits stay a really small size if you just let it hold on to everything that it wants to hold on to. So the fruits will be really small if you let it do that. So I'm going to thin this out pretty heavily this year, because I wished I thinned it out more last year, and I thought I was pretty handed last year. But yeah, I think Tallahatchie does the same thing. It tends to be overproductive. So that's worth keeping in mind if you have a variety like that. I'm not sure if there are any other varieties that do that, but to the degree that these do. But so this cluster, Allegheny, I really want to thin it out because the fruits stay pretty small if you don't. So I'm going to thin these out to maybe like 1 or 2 per cluster. I think last year I kept a lot of them at like 2 or 3 per cluster, which is nice. Even some I kept to like 4. But with Allegheny, I want to thin them out to 1 or 2. So you can do this with like snippers, clippers, or pruners, whatever you want, or just by hand. You know, I can do this pretty easily, just picking them off. So I'm just going to take this one in the back and pinch it, and it breaks off. Easier to do with 2 hands so that you know, you don't risk breaking off the whole cluster. But this works for now, and so I thin that out to 2. This big one here, it has 6 on there, so I really want to thin that out. Let's see, which ones do I want to keep? Generally, I think it's best to keep the larger ones, because they've already had more development, more energy put into those. So maybe I'll pinch that off. You see, I'm just kind of bending that one off. Let's see. I'll just bend that one off. That would leave it down to 2. Yeah, I think I'm going to prune this one down to 1 even. Just because I want to try clipping a lot of these Alleghenies clusters down to 1 to see how much larger a single fruit in a cluster. Well, it's not really a cluster anymore if it's a single fruit, but regardless, to see how much bigger it would be in that case. And then there's this last cluster up here. Oh, did that one just fall off? Yeah, I think it just fell off by me touching it. Actually, that whole cluster fell off by me touching it. Wow. So I barely touched that. So that was just going to fall off regardless. That's fine. So now I have 2 on that one, 1 on this one. That's fine for this branch. Allegheny has a lot more on this tree. So even there's some smaller ones like this little cluster here. I'll have to be more careful if I want to thin clusters at this size. So maybe I'll wait a bit longer to thin a cluster like that. Or I definitely have to be more careful and use clippers or use 2 hands to do that. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. So I'm going from branch to branch. This one's on a different branch here. Yeah, you can see the little fruitlets really blend in with the leaves. The same color, it can be pretty hard to see them. So it's a little bit of a tedious task, but it tends to be worth it. And if you're afraid to do it, I know it's, it can be kind of scary and kind of feel bad doing this, to see all of your fruit being cut off, but it is pretty beneficial. And if you're worried about doing it, just do it a little bit, just do it a little bit the first year and see how the tree responds, see how many fruit you get, see the size of the fruit you get. Then you'll come to realize, later in the year, maybe what you should have done differently, or if you should have pruned more, or maybe, you kept too many clusters on one branch. You'll find out that year. Pawpaws can, they can handle, they're going to drop off the fruit that they can't handle. So, you can always just do it a little bit the first year and then see how that works and maybe do more the next year. So I'm just going to go through, this one, this is no good. Like, you can see this branch right here. I don't know how many are on this. Well, several. Okay, there's, I'm not focusing very well. I apologize, but there's like 2 right there. There's a cluster right here with 2 on them. Right here, this little branch coming off right here. It doesn't even have any leaves on it. But it has 2 clusters with 2 fruits each. They're already pretty good size so far. So that I'm not okay with. I definitely want to thin that down to 1 cluster. I don't want 2 on that, otherwise it's going to get pretty heavy. A lot of weight on this branch, and this little one could even break. So I'm just going to take this top cluster off. Let's see. I'll just kind of bend it right there, and it comes off. I probably should have tested this one first. Just give it a little tap to make sure it's not already falling off. That's probably a good thing to do. And then this one has kind of a weird issue. It's a bit curved. Almost looks like it has a little zipper on that end. So maybe I'll pinch that right off and just keep that one. And I'm just going to do this, go throughout all these trees, and try to weigh them. Try and think of it as a balancing act. Just trying to get an appropriate amount of weight on each tree, when the fruits are larger later in the summer. So just kind of balancing the number of fruits all around the tree, around the branches. So I think that's all I gotta say right now. So I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.